You heard who the panelists are. You can see them on your screen. Eric Winston, Jene Elzie, Blake Lawrence, and myself. Right now, I think we're missing Eric Winston. Sorry, we may be missing Jeff Chown, but he will join us as he is available. To the panelists, here's what I want to ask. So we've got about 500,000 NCAA student athletes who may, starting in either January when legislation is theoretically passed, or in August or in July, based on how you think about the state of Florida, are suddenly going to possibly have some rights that they can actually start to work with. And I think a lot of people in the country are believing that what we're dealing with is Zion Williamson or Trevor Lawrence, and they're not really thinking about field hockey players or cross-country runners or swimmers. So I think the question is, we're about to have 500,000 small entrepreneurs, and you guys are agency types who think about brands and how to leverage brands. How should we be thinking about these new rights? And let me start with Jene, with you first, and see what you think.
Sure. So it's great to be with you all. I have a couple of thoughts. So as a former collegiate gymnast, I think this is the most exciting development that I can think of in college sports. So if I'm putting myself in the shoes of the athlete, I think this is a great, really exciting opportunity, as you said, to become a true entrepreneur and a brand builder. That said, I think the extent to which this NIL business is going to succeed is really dependent on a couple of things that are not necessarily on the athlete. So we talk about agents, and yes, having the definition and the guardrails around the agents and what the agents can do is really important, but that's one piece of it. I think the other two pieces that really need to be taken into account, first of all, from a position of an ex-brand marketer, I know as a brand marketer, I have limited bandwidth and I have limited budget. And so the degree to which this is a turnkey solution for me is really going to dictate how much I can focus on collegiate athletes as opposed to the entire universe of athletes that I have to choose from. The other side of it is, from the athlete side, I think my biggest concern for athletes is, they're student athletes. They already have 2 day jobs. Now you've got another piece on top of this. So the degree to which we can support athletes and make this, again, a turnkey solution, give athletes as much support as they possibly can have, is really going to determine if this is going to be something that is accessible to 10% of the universe or 50% of the universe. So I think about it from the structural standpoint about how accessible the solution is going to be.
Blake, your firm, Open Doors, is already starting to do some stuff in this space. What are your thoughts?
No, I think a lot of the conversation around the traditional endorsement deals is crowded the media and the coverage on this. But the fact is, the majority of student athletes across the country, they're using social media, digital media to build up an audience that they can ultimately monetize. So today's athletes, they are exposed to technology-driven monetization. Their roommate is streaming on Twitch and getting paid. Their little cousin is getting paid to post on Instagram. I mean, and these are the great equalizers of this NIL era, is that the majority of student athletes are going to use technology to build an audience so they can monetize. And I've got a couple facts for you, Rick, I want to share with the audience here. There's a D3 hockey player. His name is Lawson McDonald. Okay. On TikTok, he has more followers and has generated more likes than every NHL team. Okay. There's a D1 baseball player. His name is Jackson Olson. He plays at Stetson College, and he has more engagements, more likes on TikTok than the Chicago Cubs. There's twins at a Mountain West program, the Cavender twins, Fresno State. They have 2.2 million TikTok followers. This is the athlete and their NIL value today. I mean, there's a way to quantify it. There's numbers, and these tools are readily available. We're just less than 10 months away from letting them turn them on and turn this into real value in the peak of their career.
And of course, I talk a lot in my classes about esports, and you have to think about Twitch. And there are now networks or platforms that exist out there that are giving people that opportunity to instantly monetize something that they can be good at. Eric Winston, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'll echo really what's already been said and don't have a lot to add other than the fact that if you really look at it from the macro view, I think of what both of you guys have said already is we're basing all of our assumptions on what the earning power is of these athletes and what possibly might happen really on arcane type of figures and arcane type of thoughts, right? These young people today are doing so many innovative things and thinking about technology and thinking about how they build their brands in just such different ways than I think even savvy brand execs now at bigger companies. As Blake said, I mean, the fact that these athletes have more likes and are thinking about it differently just shows you that there's a whole other way of doing this. There's a whole other way of building brands. And I think none of us really know which way this is going to go, but I'm excited for it because I think this is going to open up so many different opportunities. And one more thing I would say too is we keep on saying, oh, this is not going to be significant revenue or not going to be significant opportunity for some of these D1 athletes or any collegiate athlete. And I just want to make it sure everybody remembers what it was like in college. And the fact that if you could post on Twitter for $250, it sounded like a pretty good opportunity to me. So that I want to make sure everybody kind of remembers that because I think sometimes what gets lost in the conversation is where our finances really were when we were in college and what kind of opportunities are meaningful.
Gene, you mentioned guardrails, and I'm kind of fascinated by that piece that is a part of the coming NIL legislation. Who's going to set them? Is it going to be set by the university, by the conference, by the NCAA, by the state or federal government? How do guardrails shape this discussion? How do we put that in the context of agencies wanting to look at student athletes and athletes thinking about themselves?
Well, I think the guardrails are really going to determine, as I said, determine the size of this opportunity and the size of the business. I think one, is consistent a set of guardrails that you can have, it's going to be better. It's the concept of each state having their own set of guardrails and then having to implement those. And then what happens if an athlete transfers to a new school, to a new state, I think is really challenging. But right now, I think once those guardrails are in place, there's going to be a myriad of opportunities for agencies, for brand consultants, for brands. But right now, it feels like we're all at sort of the starting gate and we just don't know which direction we're going to go. But until you have those guardrails, coming from such a highly regulated already environment, which, athletic departments already are operating under, that is really going to determine how much resource the schools need in order to implement, these guardrails in order to make sure we're compliant. I just think that it is hopefully not too far off. And the only thing I would hope is that it's as consistent across the board as possible.
Gene, I love your title, by the way, Chief Growth Officer. I think that's a great one. Blake, I'm going to change it up here a little bit. We kind of represent agencies and the belief, I think, that there are going to be a lot of agencies involved in trying to rush out and align with student athletes. We're going to have good agents and bad agents. We're going to have big agencies and college roommates. What's your read on how agencies or agents are going to drive this discussion in the next year?
Yeah, certainly. I think that all three of us know a heck of a lot about the agent space. And, at Open Doors as a technology provider to the athlete endorsement industry, there's about 1,200 agents that use our technology to help manage opportunities for professional athletes. And we've asked them that question: what is the desire to get involved here? And I know many have mentioned old Trevor Lawrence. You'll notice similar last name, but no relation. I wish I had long, flowing blonde hair like good old Trevor. But I asked an agent in the Southeast. I said, "Hey, let's take Clemson. Clemson's got 500 plus student athletes on campus. How many are you going after in 2021? Imagine the rules change, right?" He said 3 or 4. Right, so 3 or 4. That is such a small percentage of these student athletes, and that's one of the biggest Power 5 schools and all the programs. So I believe that 99.9% of student athletes will have no agent representation in a formal way. And if they do have representation, guess who it's going to be? Mom, dad, uncle, cousin, right? And there will be a prominent role that parents will play in an 18 to 22-year-old's life as it relates to their finances and making decisions, which is very key in a large amount of student athletes that are in this space. They already have that experience. They're getting help from someone in their life. I think they'll still just play a role, but it won't be the formal certified agent that we're used to.
Eric, this is a panel that's supposed to talk a little bit about branding and things of that nature. I'm going to guess that most student athletes have never thought about themselves as a brand. You've got a Rebels uniform hanging behind you on the wall. How would you have thought about yourself as a brand, and how do you think these 500,000 essentially student athletes are going to start imagining themselves as properties or as brands that can be monetized?
Yeah, obviously, I think there's going to be a lot of mistakes along the way, as any 18 to 22-year-old will probably make, especially with the amount of technology at their fingertips. I sometimes look back and I'm really happy that I didn't have the same sort of technology at my fingertips, because I can't imagine maybe some of the dumb stuff I would have said or done. But, listen, I think that it'll be up to the schools to educate. I think it's going to be more onerous on campus and through the coaching staffs and everybody as they've gotten used to Twitter, as they've gotten used to some of these other things. I do think some coaches and some schools have stuck their head in the ground and tried to pretend that, these kids you can't be on Twitter during the season because we're going to make sure that you don't make mistakes. I don't really think that's what college is about. So when we really start thinking about branding and start thinking about how you position yourself, I'm sure a lot of this will be done intuitively, but I doubt there's any 18 or 19-year-olds that are going to be really thinking about themselves as, how can I play long here and how can I position myself? I think some of it will be done by accident, and maybe that will be good, maybe that will be bad, but I doubt you'll see any long-term branding plays, maybe with the exception of some really big-time star athletes that come out of high school that might have some professional representation, just because the star is so big that there is somebody that would want to work on that type of basis. But just following it and thinking about branding at that young of an age, I just doubt you're going to really see any concerted long-term effort around a brand, other than someone just having a fun or have the ability to just themselves on certain platforms.
Gene, this is not a gotcha question, but as a former student athlete of color and a female athlete, I think one of the things that we're going to hear voices about in the future is whether or not there's a possibility that NIL legislation could create a situation where we may actually sacrifice women. And there'll be some Title IX concerns, or let's call it gender equity, in order to achieve what some people are viewing as racial equity. Now, it's a thankless question, and it's flawed almost in the way that I frame it, but I think that there are going to be people who believe that NIL is being created, falsely, I think, to benefit student athletes of color, but that a lot of NIL value, or the money generated, will go to male athletes, and that may be at the expense of women. Just your thoughts, and I want to make sure that we're framing this question in a way that works for you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I believe that earlier in the session that there was a point made that the marketplace sort of is what it is. I think that with Title IX and coming from a university, an institution that really believed in Title IX, and I'm certainly a big believer in Title IX. I do think that once we understand what the federal laws are, what the guidelines are, and that definition of equitability and the enforcement of equitability will inform how we look at this issue. But I think the reality is, just like you have some certain sports that are probably going to have more athletes that are going to get deals, endorsement deals. They're going to be part of, if group licensing is a part of it, there are certain sports that are going to have a better opportunity. That doesn't take opportunities off the table for everybody. But I think that is the reality of what the marketplace is. You can only enforce, again, from the brand marketer side, you can only enforce, if you're coming in as a third party, equitability to a certain point. I don't see them as completely separate. I don't think that if you're able to find a balance in Title IX, that precludes racial justice, or it disproportionately affects Black athletes, as an example. I don't think that is actually, I don't see those being in conflict. I think that as a female athlete, again, I think that Eric had a great point, coming from zero for all athletes, whatever you can get, whether you're a lacrosse player, whether you're a gymnast, whether you're a football player, is going to be better than what we had before. What I would like to see is just to make sure that whatever that definition of equitability, that is consistent and that is enforced. But that does not all of a sudden mean that the marketplace itself flips and becomes something totally different than what it is now.
Great answer. We'll go last question, and we'll go Blake, Eric, and then back to you, Jene, to wrap us up. And I think it's that we're about to possibly have this legislation. Are you guys excited about the possibilities that are out there? And of course, that's a little bit of a dumb question in so much as agency people, I think you got to be really excited. But is it going to create a bit of a Wild West with a lot of people racing out there to kind of grab hold of student athletes and say, all right, you've got these rights and now I'm here to serve you? What's your worldview of what we're going to see in the next year? And I'll start with you, Blake.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And to look at this market and understand that there will be tremendous opportunity for the student athletes. And that's ultimately the goal of collegiate athletics, is to create opportunities for student athletes. And this is a new one. And I think there will be a rush to have representation, but I think it'll look quite a bit different than professional athlete representation about who's in the market. And one of the things I know, I got to bring one quick thing that Jene mentioned, that the concept of where these dollars come from, and the market does set the dollars are going to go to where the dollars provide value. But in professional sports, the buyers think with ration. They're looking at numbers, right? They're trying to figure out, where do I put my money to get the biggest return? In collegiate sports, sponsors spend based on passion. So today, in an hour and a half, I'm going to go do an education session with the Nebraska women's bowling team, one of the best bowling teams in the country. And the fact that they're wearing a Nebraska in means that every sponsor of Nebraska wants to support them. And that doesn't exist in professional sports with women athletes. You don't spread your passion from the Chiefs to the Royals, just because they're in Kansas City. But in collegiate sports, the love that sponsors have just for the university itself will afford opportunities for local sponsors to work with athletes from all sports. All right, I took too long. Eric, you're up.
That's not like you, Blake. I can't believe it. Two things come to mind that I think I'm excited about. Quite frankly, if the NCAA gets out of the way some of the time, because I think they have a real propensity to kind of mess some things up. One, I would say, is around the co-branding side of things, right? Being able to, as Blake talked about, the sponsors, the school sponsors, being able to activate some of these sponsorships with athletes using, being able to put the N on a T-shirt and being in an activation, being in a commercial. And that extends all the way out to bringing back the NCAA football game, right? Remember, every fan I talk to about college football says, hey, are we going to bring back the NCAA football game now? Right? Well, that can only happen if licensees, if other sponsors are allowed to use players and the team marks together. And so far, we've seen a big pushback from the NCAA saying, well, I don't think we can do that. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing, but the ideas of these big ideas of bringing back video games, bringing in a personalized apparel, T-shirts, things of this nature makes sense. And it creates a lot of opportunity, as Blake said, not just for football and basketball, but down the line for a lot of fans of a lot of these schools in these different sports. The second thing I'm excited about, and Jene, I think really put it out there, is every athlete's going to actually be able to maximize their earning power when they have it, right? Think about a lacrosse player. His stardom, his fame or her fame might be the biggest when they're in college, right? And a collegiate gymnast, the same thing. They might actually be able to monetize it. Will it be as high as some others? Maybe not, but they will actually be able to monetize their likeness now at the time when it's the most monetizable, if that's even a word. But that's what I'm excited about, is these opportunities. Again, if everybody will just get out of the way, set some logical guardrails, as Jene also said, and let some of the market and let some of these kids and let everybody come into this place and really help this along. I think it would be great for schools. It's going to be great for the student athletes, and I think there's a way where everybody benefits. But I think that the patronistic nature that the NCAA has taken for so many years and seems like they're continuing to take, I worry is going to prolong some of this and not allow some of the natural monetization that should take place.
Jene, I owe you an apology. I think I got your name wrong once before, so apologies. But over to you to send us home and hopefully have someone like Scott come in at the end of your answer, and we'll be out pretty close to being at least on the time that we were allotted. So you get to bat cleanup.
No problem. It's the blessing and curse of having a unique name. So it happens all the time. I agree. I think with what both Eric and Blake said. The one thing I really do want to see is, I think IP will be an absolute game changer if collegiate IP is part of this NIL business. I think for athletes it will be a massive change. And then for me personally, what I'm really excited about is, and it may not be the most exciting piece for other people, but the whole idea of building the foundation, and I look at, we've done this kind of with professional athletes with the NBPA and Athletes First Partners, but started 2-3 years ago. And the whole notion is that there's this green light that's going to go off, and everyone's going to kind of run off and figure out what this looks like. But the reality is, when you have a chance to take an absolute blank slate of paper and build a foundation that says, this is what this is going to look like, this is how it's going to operate, here's the process, here's what the size of the opportunity is, that is for me what's personally very exciting, because this is an entirely new business. And we all get to be a part of it from the get-go. And so I think, we come back in a year and have this conversation, we're going to be in a very different place, and we're going to be pioneers in this space, which is really, really exciting.
Well, we at Sportico think we're pioneering. So would you please, by the way, check the links that I and Eben Novi-Williams have put on the side. My colleagues have done some exceptional work in the college space, particularly as it relates to NIL, and the links are there. Go check it out. Eric, please say hello to Ahmad for me. Blake, kudos. I'm putting the Open Door shirt on so everybody saw it. And Rick, playing off something that Eric said, do you remember what it was like when you were in college? While everybody else was partying, what I would do at 3, 4, 5 in the morning on Saturday and Sunday, I would borrow my buddy's truck. I'd go to the fraternity houses, take the empty kegs off the lawn, collect them, and then return them to the party source for the $20 deposit. It certainly beat working at the library.
That's right.
But I do remember what it was like, and I hope we take that away from what you said, Eric. That is true. All right, I see our friends Mike McCann and Darren Heitner on time. Lawyers bill by the hour, so I don't want to get Darren's. Let's get them in here. Thanks, everybody.